All right, all right, all right. Let's get right to it. I know we're a little late today. Let me know if you guys can hear me. Give me a thumbs up and let me know where you're watching from. Welcome to Pan African Perspectives, your bi weekly live stream where we talk about all things Africa related. We are doing a Ask Me Anything today. So if you got any questions for me, type the questions in the chat and we will help answer your questions. Let me just make sure we're live everywhere so we got participation. So are we live everywhere? Let me know if you guys can hear me. Can you guys hear me? If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up in the chat. Let me know where you're watching from. My name is Joe Hatagwa. I am a Sierra Leonean American. I spent a little over 8 years traveling around the continent of Africa, a couple of those years living on the continent of Africa and investing on the continent. And so I also live there. So, I try to help people do the same thing, visit, move, and invest. But let me know. Got any questions you want to ask me? Some people ask me to do a Q&A or ask me anything. So we're doing one today. Today's been a very busy day, so I haven't had the opportunity to put together another live stream. So we're just going to do a Q&A today. Ask me anything, and I'm here to answer your questions. So we'll give a little bit of time for everybody to join. But again, we are live doing a Q&A for those who want to ask me what you want to ask me. So anybody got any questions about the continent of Africa, my time living there, what I do now while I'm there, any advice I can give on visiting, moving, and investing, just let me know. And I'm here to answer those questions. So I'm going to start with a basic opener because I think some people do ask me this every time I tell them that I lived on the continent. The question always comes as to why I lived in Ghana instead of Sierra Leone right away when I first moved. My family's from Sierra Leone. I was born and raised in the United States, but I did move to Ghana first instead of Sierra Leone. I did do Sierra Leone move 2.5 years into living on the continent. And the reason for that was just smoother transition, softer landing. I knew that I could go to Ghana and immediately hit the ground running. So within 3 months, I had a full-time job. And I had people who knew, the hookup for an apartment. And I had a lot of options for kind of just a lifestyle transition easily from the West to West Africa. So Ghana was first. And then, of course, I moved to Sierra Leone after 2.5 years. And I lived there for a little over a year before I moved back to the States. And now I'm building things so that I can go back full time. But yeah, so that's the number one question people ask me. Another question people ask me is how much it costs to live when I was in Ghana. And that number is always different for everyone. You might have saw that clip that I did when Ivy Prosper had asked me. And, I spent $25,000 in 6 months, but a lot of that had to do with expenses I had in the United States. But then I also had expenses, on the continent as well. I was just kind of living in both worlds with the same expenses I had that full year. So when I moved to Ghana, it cost me a significant amount of money to take on the new expenses that I was not prepared for. So 25K was gone in 6 months because my income was pretty low from the company I was working for. So I learned a lot from that experience, but for sure, I spent a significant amount of money. So people always ask me about that. Like, what was that like? And so, we can just run through some of the expenses so you guys know, right? So my rent was $600 a month. I did pay that up front for a year at first, and then I think 6 months at a time. So that was number one. So let's say $600 a month for rent. I paid $100 a month for I pay the questions that people ask crazy. Somebody asked a crazy question. So $600 a month for rent. I paid $100 a month for for my house help, right? So that's $700 a month. I paid about $75 a month for internet because it was I topped it up every time I ran out. I kept using it, and I also had data on all the different internet service providers. So that's now $775, right? I also had to pay for electricity, which I was getting robbed on electricity, but I would say that was about $100 a month on electricity. So now we're on $875. Food. I went out to eat a couple times a week, sometimes once a week, sometimes twice a week. So let's say that was about, and I'm not even doing the math, I'm just doing the math off the top of my head. Let's say that's another, let's say $200 to $300 a month, right? So that's taking me to like 1,300, or like 1,100, 1,200. And then I also had to buy groceries, etc. Right? Even though I had house help, but I was buying groceries. So that's another, let's say $200 a month. So that puts me right under $1,500 a month on those basic expenses, which is actually not that bad. But I had other expenses. Like I said, I was paying for storage here. I had my life insurance that I was continuing to pay. I had some expenses that I had here in the United States that continued while I was there. What were my other expenses? I mean, those were my major expenses. Haircuts, it's like $10 every 2 weeks. So that was cheap. It wasn't that expensive. So let's say $20 a month. And so, yeah, I'm just trying to think of anything else, I mean, that was my daily activities, my daily life. So, for under $2,000 a month, I did most of what I needed to do. The only issue was that you had to pay rent 12 months in advance, right? So that was the one thing that, every time rent was due, it's, and, large sums. And at $600 a month, I think that's about 7,500, 7,600. I don't do math in public, but you guys got the idea. I think if 3,600, it's about 7,000 and change per year, I think. So yeah, so that, I mean, that was the thing that you had to take into consideration, right? It's not like a monthly rent payment. But any questions do you guys have for me? First of all, y'all are not telling me where you guys are watching from. Let me know where you're watching from, so I know where people are watching from. And if there's any questions that anybody has about what it was like living on the continent. I'll also talk about some high-level ideas around investing and traveling around the continent. Another question that people always ask me is, what countries have I been to on the continent? And every once in a while I mention this, but I tell people, so the countries I've been to on the continent is Tanzania, Egypt, Ethiopia for 24 hours, which I just posted that video earlier this week, or yesterday, earlier this week. So Tanzania, Egypt, Ethiopia, Gambia, Sierra Leone, Ghana. Those are all the countries that I spent at least 24 hours in. I've also done stopovers at airports, etc. But I think those are the main countries. Oh, Nigeria. I've been to Nigeria as well. I was in Lagos. So I think it's about 6 countries or so on the continent. I do plan to go more places. It's just very difficult to travel from west to east or southern Africa because there's just so much distance between these two locations. But I do plan to go to South Africa, and I do plan to go to Kenya within the next 12 to 24 months. So stay tuned on when I'm going to take those trips. I definitely want to make sure that you guys are along for the ride. So I'll be doing vlogs. I'll be doing live streams. I may be going with other content creators that you guys might be familiar with. So stay tuned on that because there's definitely more to come on my continental travels. As far as the investments I've made, hold on one second. Sorry. So a couple questions. Oh, so I'll just mention the investments and I'll get some of the questions and comments. So as far as investments, I co-own 5 acres of land in Sierra Leone, and also I am in a property dispute over 4 town lots, and then I have another 2 town lots. Blood, sweat, and tears went into paying for those things. You have no idea. And I'm, obviously I'm building an income property on one of those properties. But yeah, so that's the investments I have in terms of land. And then the other investments that I'm working on, I'll tell you guys at a later date. All right. So there's some specific questions or comments that I want to get to. So Catherine says, hello, Joe. I don't have a question. I just wanted to share something. My father just passed away in Houston and was taken care of by a wonderful nurse from Sierra Leone who is friends with your sister. Catherine, I am so sorry to hear that. I know what it's like to lose a parent. So I My condolences to you and your family. And yeah, it's a small world in Houston, the Sierra Leoneans there. So my sister does live in Houston. And so you know, if she's friends with my sister, then I know she's good people. So shout out to her. So Jada says you should do a group travel thing. Yeah, this comes up a lot, actually. I was actually talking to somebody on Saturday. He and I had a lengthy discussion about what kinds of things I want to do in country. He does tours. And I do offer tours to people. So like there are tours that you could go on. And by the way, I guess I should mention I'm going to put them in the comments or in the description, but I have now links if you guys want to get in touch with all the partnerships, the people who I have partnerships with around travel, investing, and moving. I have forms that you can fill out. And that's the other thing, to make sure that I have your contact information so I can let you know when a new live stream is coming out, when a new video is coming out, when I'm going on a travel to a specific place, where I'm going to be at a location in the States. So I'll make sure to share all that with you. But the question, the comment of doing a group travel thing it's on the list of things that I could potentially do. As far as myself handling it logistically, that'll be a challenge, but I'm more than likely to offer those services to folks through someone else and just let them handle the logistics, but me bring people on the trip for sure. But I get you though, Jada. It's something that comes up all the time. So Joseph says, okay, glad you were in Lagos, Nigeria. Please tell others what they have been missing for centuries based on Western media lies. Yeah, I mean, Lagos was man, the way I was described Lagos, it's like my experience in Sierra Leone and New York City combined. It's a big city, lots of people. It has its own character. You know, Lagos has its own character, but the pidgin being spoken kind of reminds me of Creole in Sierra Leone, and so it's like the two combined. Yeah, I had a great time. I was only there for 2 weeks, but I had an amazing time. This is back in 2022. It's been a little while since I've been to Lagos, but the plan is to go back sometime soon. I have former work colleagues that are there, some friends that are there, so I need to go back. Great question from Tony. Hey, brother, what banks can I use from the US when living in Africa? So all banks generally can be used kind of anywhere in the world. It's just what fees do you have to pay to take money out of the ATM, right? That's the main thing. There are international banks like Standard Charter Bank, which I think they bought Barclays. So Standard Charter Bank, do they have US branches? I mean, that might be the only one that may have US branches, because it's actually not a African bank. It is it's a corporate and institutional banking hub rather than a retail bank. Okay, so Standard Charter is a retail bank on the continent, but it is an institutional corporate bank in the US. So I think it's a very different thing. But yeah, I mean, I was just taking money out of the ATM whenever I needed to. Now, of course, that always came with additional fees. So most people, when they're living on the continent, get local bank accounts, and either you generate revenue in country and you put that in your bank account, or some people wire money to those accounts. But either way, it's going to cost you money to send money. It's going to cost you money to send money from the United States to whatever country you're in on the continent. It is what it is. There's those transfer fees because you're sending it between different institutions, and a lot of time there's a central institution has to go to first to get validated before it gets to your particular bank. That's just how it works. It's just the way it is, and you know, everybody who lives on the continent is used to that. That's why there's so many remittance services like Remitly and World Remit, RIA, and all these others where people send money. You know, Western Union. People send money through all these things, but all of those have a cost associated with it. So your best bet is to generate income in country and put that money in the bank. Now, as far as getting a bank account, many times it requires being a resident and or a citizen to be able to open a bank account. So in Sierra Leone, I opened my bank account after I became a Sierra Leonean citizen. In Ghana, I opened up my bank account after I became a resident in Ghana. When it came to Nigeria, you have to get a bank verification number, a BVN. It does take at least 48 hours or longer. And I went by the time I got to that point, it was already too late before I left. But generally, you can open up a bank account. It's just putting money in that bank. And many people do a couple different types of bank accounts. You have your checkings and your savings, right? You may have a business bank account. And a lot of people have a US dollar account and then a local currency account. So that's the thing you got to decide. And it depends on the foreign currency exchanges within country that will determine whether or not you actually have access to currency in your native country or the country you're coming from. For example, there was a time when I was trying to pull out dollars in a December. I can't remember what particular year, but they didn't. That particular bank did not have any US dollars. They did. They just didn't have it available for me. They had it available for specific high value clients. I was not a high value client at the time, so they did not make that available to me. So unfortunately, I was not able to get my dollars out of my dollar account. They had to convert it to Leones and give me the Leones equivalent. All right. So a wise man says, I am thinking of getting a resident permit. Which countries are you familiar with doing this? What are the steps if you're not on the continent but going back and forth? So, each country is very different, right? So so that's one thing you'll have to just look at is each individual country is very, very different in terms of this process. Generally, you have to have a criminal background check, right? So either you can go to your embassy from your country and get some version of that, or you can just generally you can get it from your embassy, or there's another criminal background check that you can do, and you share that with the country that you're looking to get residency in. There are sometimes fees, there are always fees associated with getting residency, and sometimes it's incorporated with other things. I'm renewing my residency every couple of years in Ghana because I got my residency originally through employment. So my employer covered my residency cost. And it was done after I got hired. It was a whole process debacle, but it got done. You can get citizenship residency in many different countries, but every country is different. So it all depends on where you want to go and what you want to do. Right. So, obviously I spend a lot of time talking about West Africa because, that's where I spend most of my time, if not almost all of my time when I go to the continent. And that's what I'm familiar with. That's where I lived. So I lived in Ghana, I got my residency. I had already gotten citizenship in Sierra Leone, but there are residency processes. If you need help getting residency, I can share a link with you guys to... Well, I haven't built that out yet. I'm trying to think of what's the best way to do it. Okay, here's what you guys can do. If you want to get residency and let's say Ghana, for example, right? And you want somebody to walk you through that process specifically for Ghana, I may be able to see if I can help you for Nigeria or Kenya. Shoot me an email at contact@authenticafrican.com. And we will see what we can work out to put you in touch with the right people that can help you get residency, at least in one of those three countries. Ghana, for sure, I can definitely help you with that, but I'll put you in touch with the right person. Hope that answers your question. If you have more questions, feel free to ask them, though. Yes, Jade is asking, how's the house project in Sierra Leone coming along? We need updates. Yeah, I know. I need updates too. All right, so how's the house project coming along? So we are parts of this I can't really say publicly as of yet, but I will say this. I had a mold issue because as I mentioned this before, I didn't build all the way up to the roof. I built the first floor, or what they call a ground floor in Europe and in Sierra Leone at the very least. And I did what they call floating, which is basically the top of the ground floor. And it was not structured in a way that is set up to be an outdoor roof It's the floor that's supposed to be what people are walking on the second floor, or the floor above the ground floor, the second story. So what ended up happening in that situation is, like, all rainy season, water was pouring on it and seeping through. We tried to put tarping over top, it did not work, and so I ended up in a situation where the moisture got in between the ceiling panels and the cement, so it was seeping through the cement, and this is the ceiling panel. So in that area, the moisture was there, and there was actually water kind of sitting on top of the ceiling panels. So when we took the ceiling panels out, just water just flooded into the place. And there was water in different places, but basically water got into the electrical system. So I have to replace the lights. I have to replace the ceiling, and I had to treat the mold. So we are going to be doing our second mold treatment, I think, tomorrow. And so most of it has been taken care of. And then we start to work on the next floor. We are way behind. And that all has to do with the fact that the contractor that I utilized for this process took on too much. And that is the explanation I will give on their behalf for now. But yeah, so that's where we are. But Jada, let me know if you have any other specific questions. Hopefully that answers the question for now. Tony B834 says, thanks. Is Sierra Leone renewing passports for expats now? Hey, depends. Renewing passports? Yes. They have not stopped renewing passports. If you have a passport already, you can renew your passport. That is a process that you can do. Generally, they don't like to do it remotely. That was one of the challenges I see, is remote renewal of passports. That's one of the things that you do have a hard time dealing with. But one thing you can attempt to do, if I remember correctly, I think they were allowing you to go to the Sierra Leonean embassy in the United States to renew it. Let me check to see passport renewals. Renewal Sierra Leone. I had just seen something about this. The Sierra Leone Immigration Department, or an official Sierra Leone embassy if you are abroad. So you can renew it at the Sierra Leonean embassy in the United States or in the UK. There's a consulate in New York, and then the embassy is in DC. There's just a form you got to fill out. You got to pay the fee. You need to send passport size photos. You need an original birth certificate. Sometimes you might need a national ID card or a marriage certificate, just forms of renewals that is required, at least in Sierra Leone. Renewals abroad, you can, most embassies require you to submit a current passport, recent photographs, and a completed renewal form. It's about $180 to renew that passport externally. And the picture size is kind of a funny picture size. So you just want to look that up. And then if you're in Sierra Leone, you can renew it as well. I went through that renewal process. They do not allow you to have your phone, so I couldn't vlog that process. You're not allowed to have your phone. You check, excuse me, you go through a metal detector, because you are, well, actually, sorry, let me take a step back. I'm talking about, I renewed my American passport in Sierra Leone. You're asking about renewing your Sierra Leonean passport. So the immigration department is there. I got a guy on the inside. If you guys are interested, I can reach out to contact at Authentic African, and I can help you out. Jada, I know that you got your passport renewed, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or you got your new passport. Let us know what that process was like for you so I can share it with the group. She just recently got it done. Her experience is unique because she was born in Sierra Leone. And she was adopted from Sierra Leone. So she had to basically start the process all over again. Tony's saying, okay, good luck with the house. Ambiguous about buying land right now. Okay. So here's one of the things I will give as advice for folks who are looking to buy on the continent. There are pros and cons of buying on a plan, right, where these guys build the same houses all the time, you know, there's not a lot of customization, but you know, you have a timeline. They know how long it's going to take them, how much it's going to cost, and it's kind of like templated. And for those who are building remotely, especially, that is more of the ideal scenario. If you really don't have somebody trustworthy on the ground, is to build it based on a templated process. I would tell you right now, I'm not building on a templated process. I had 2 different architects do the drawing for my house. And because of encroachment on my land and a few other things, we had to make some adjustments to how this thing was going to be built. And what I ended up with is a situation where I'm not exactly happy with the progress and the speed. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, you know, it wasn't a templated process. Everything has to go through. It's all being done for the first time in the way that I'm asking for it to be done. I mean, obviously they built houses before, but not in this specific way. And so because of that, that does lead to some challenges with the building's time and schedule and things of that nature. So all good questions, but I hope this is helpful. Any other questions that you guys have for me? I'm trying to think of what other questions people ask me. People do ask me personal questions about like lifestyle and dating on the continent. Those are things I talk about behind the paywall. So if you guys subscribe to the YouTube channel and you do the memberships, you can see all the conversations I had while on the continent about what that was like. I put all those behind the paywall. And then eventually I am starting a subscription service for very specific and detailed life specific experiences, stuff that I don't share here, that I can't share necessarily publicly, but it's helpful. Like, for example, litigation, land, like going through land processes, the lawyer I'm using, those kinds of questions and thoughts about what that looks like. So I'm definitely going to be sharing that behind my subscription paywall, and I'm working to get that set up in the next 2 weeks, so you guys can check that out when that time comes. I always said I've said that I'm not going to tell people stuff before I do it, but we are literally in process right now, so you guys can be on the lookout for that. And I'm planning to do members only live streams for folks who join the subscription service. So I'm looking for names for what to call it. You know, like every community has a name for their community. I haven't come up with a name for our community as of yet, so I'm open to ideas and names. But those of you who want to support and want some more specific details about things that are going on that I can't talk about publicly, you'll notice that sometimes I'll say I can't talk about these things publicly, and that is because there's ongoing litigation or other things happening. But these are things that I can talk about so that you guys can be protected whenever you are planning to do things in country. Okay. Jada says Top Salon looks like they're doing big things, but are they leasehold houses? So no, you own the land. So it's all owned land as far as I understand with Top Salon. And they are doing really good things. They're going to be a major what's the word I'm looking for? Exhibitor. I'm thinking of sponsor. They're going to be a sponsor for Vicky Rameau's Sierra Leone Diaspora Investment Conference. She just closed that deal with them recently, so they'll be all over that event, I'm sure. And I went there and did an interview with Mr. Njai, Mustafa Njai, if I'm not mistaken, that's his name. He's a Gambian man who's built in Port Harcourt and in Gambia, Port Harcourt, Nigeria, in Gambia, and then now he's building on 200 acres of land in Sierra Leone. Really good stuff. And I know some people who've already bought there. I know at least one person who's bought 2 houses, and then one other person I've talked to is buying there too. Tony says, just want to let you know I'm Mende as well. I'll shoot you an email soon about my plan. Sounds good. A wise man says, what can you share about starting a small, inexpensive business in Ghana? Specific steps. I mean, it's tough because how can I give specifics about a broad topic? The first thing I would say is make sure you register with the National Revenue Authority. Make sure you go through the proper channels. That's something that I'm going to have in my course. about moving to Ghana, like starting a business and what is required of different organizations you have to go through, I would say number one, go through the proper channels. Actually, sorry, number one, do on the ground research. Let's take a step back. Do on the ground research. You do not want to start a business based on ideas that you have, based on videos you've seen, or a one trip to the country. I mean, you need to be on the ground for extended periods of time, understand who your target market is, what problem are you solving. You do not want to be a solution in search for a problem. You want to see that there's a problem and know that you can offer the solution. Why are you uniquely qualified? What do you know that can help people with this particular problem that people are having? And how do you do it in a way that you have contingencies in place, where you're not around and you have somebody who can represent you? You can deal with power outages, water outages, fuel shortages, right? There are additional contingencies that have to be taken into consideration. Ghana generally doesn't have as many issues with electricity, but you still do have those issues from time to time. And you are going to have a resource challenge, right? It's always difficult to find people who are going to be dependable for extended periods of time. So you're going to want to do an extensive amount of research on the ground first. What I have found is that people who've been successful, from all the interviews that I've done, people who've been successful building businesses in Ghana are people who already had businesses elsewhere, and who have come to Ghana and have either expanded on a business or taken the framework for how they built that previous business and applied it in Ghana under Ghana standards and their experience in Ghana. I have met other people, though, who've never been business people before, but who have built major businesses. The way that I see most people succeeding on the continent, and this is just a free information, is targeting people like us. As you guys know, all of our platforms who are talking about content, or who are talking about the continent and doing content on the continent, all of our platforms are growing. We can maybe say I Show Speed has been helpful in that process. There's been just an ongoing process of people wanting to exit the United States, considering geopolitical nature of what's happening right now. And so there's always people coming to the continent. Everybody's digging for gold, right? The people who generate the most revenue and who offer the most value are the people who offer the tools to the people who are digging for gold, right? So when I say digging for gold, I mean those are the people who are coming to the continent, not literally digging for gold, but coming to the continent looking for something. And so ideally you want to help them get there, right? So whatever that might be. So some people are looking for rest and relaxation, and they want to have an experience of a lifetime while getting a massage. So you have, a massage company that does massages under waterfalls, where I Show Speed went to when he went. You have other people who are really looking for natural shea butter, and they're willing to pay a premium for that, right? So you package it well and you do that. And shout out to Hamamat who's doing that. You have people who want to buy cosmetics like what they're used to buying in the US. And so there's cosmetic companies there that are doing that. I think Colorbox is the name of a company that comes to mind. Some people need a house to live in. So other people are getting into real estate and real estate development. And so I really do believe that if you are on the ground and you find out what challenges people who are from the diaspora are looking to solve, and you can solve those problems, you will win in country. All right. Eddie says, what bank to avoid headaches? You're not going to be able to avoid any headaches. Hey, Africa is a continent of 54 countries, but many times headaches are headaches, especially if you have a Western mentality and Western way of doing things. Things just take a lot longer because in many places, these computers are older and slower than what you're used to in the States. The connectivity may not be as great. So there's always some kind of headache. And one of the big headaches just generally is just adjusting to a new environment. That's generally one of the bigger headaches that you'll have to deal with. I won't say that, I know I made a blanket statement about the continent, and that's because, you know, we're talking about the continent. So obviously there are nuances everywhere. There are certain countries where the banking systems are a little bit more smoother than others, and it is a very smooth transition if you're used to living in the West and moving to the continent. I hear that, you know, about certain areas on the continent, but I will tell you from my experience, I have been in a bank in Tanzania, Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and Gambia, and pretty much similar situations in each one, headache in each one for different reasons. So one of the things I will make sure that you guys keep in mind, and this is something that's really important. I think people look at the continent of Africa almost like they're like different states in a country. And obviously we all know that they're different countries. But for example, if you have Bank of America, that's your bank that you're using in the United States. If you go from New York to New Jersey to California to Kansas, if there's a Bank of America nearby, they can look at your bank account. They can issue you a new debit card. There are a number of different things they generally can do because it is within the confines of the country. What I found, and this was a shock to me, and I know it might sound rudimentary to you guys, but when I had a bank account, I won't name the bank, 2 different banks actually. Same thing happened with 2 different banks in reverse order. So one bank that I had, I was having trouble getting my money out of an account. This is from a bank that I have in Sierra Leone, but I was in Nigeria at the time. So I went into the branch for that bank in Nigeria, and they were like, call your local bank, call your bank, and they'll, you know, work it out for you. I'm like, but I'm here. You know, you guys call yourself a Pan-African bank or whatever you guys call yourself, an Africa-wide bank. Why can't you assist me here? And they were like, call your country. That's not our problem. Call your bank. I was like, all right. So that didn't help. And I actually wasn't able to pull out money at that time. Same thing happened vice versa. I opened a bank account in Ghana, and when I was in Sierra Leone, I had an issue with the card, and I went to the branch in Sierra Leone and like, we can't issue you a new card. You have to talk to your bank in Ghana, because even though it is a bank that operates in all the different countries, every single country has its own specific infrastructure. And when it comes to issuing new cards or making adjustments, you have to open a new bank account in that specific country. So you can still take most of the time, you can generally take money out of your account, but it is regionally based. It is a Ghana-based bank account, or is a Sierra Leone-based bank account, or a Nigeria-based bank account. And that was my experience. So I tell that to people because how would you know unless you're on the ground and go through that experience? And, you know, that was not fun. That was not fun. And these were moments when I really needed that cash. Like, for example, getting out of an Uber, and the Uber driver's like, because I was a cash trip, and he's like, can you pay me cash? And like, my card's not working. I go into the branch and they're like, nope. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? This guy's still waiting for me. And so, yeah, those are some of the things I would say. If everyone can give our brother a thumbs up, that would be great. He does a lot to give us info. I appreciate that, Tony. Thank you, because it's not easy. Let me tell you something, especially after a long day like today and a night like last night. So yeah, I appreciate that. V Davis says, I'm going to Africa for 6 months. Can't wait to explore. Where are you going? Let us know. V Davis says, I love Ghana. Me too. I love Ghana too. Jada says, everyone's digging for gold, building housing, but nobody is selling the shovels, other essentials. And that's what I'm here to do. Because Jada, you're right. I think personal guidance is going to be really important in this next phase of this Blaxit that people are saying, this black exit from the West. And it's going to be really important that people have a pathway to making the move. There are some people out there that are offering some insight. As much as I can, I want to offer courses, insight, resources. These are all things that I want to offer within my subscription service. So my resources. So for example, when I'm in Sierra Leone, right? People ask me, where did you buy your air conditioning from? Or where did you buy your refrigerator from? And yes, I put them in the video, But if you need the address to the location, it'll be there. If I have a person that I work with at the specific location, I have their phone number in the document. Same thing with Ghana, right? I bought some furniture at China Mall. I bought some furniture at Palace Mall. I bought some stuff at Home Decor. I bought things at different places, so I can tell you where I bought them for and who I bought them from, what I bought there, all those kinds of things. And so these are all things that I want to make available to people because there's just no easy way to do that in this environment. So when you have a subscription service, these are the things that I want to do. So I want to give you guys the tools to make the move, to make investments, to do all the things that you need to do to make your transition smooth to the continent. Tony says, if I'm on the continent, I don't want to have to fly back to the US because of banking issues. So I would imagine it just, you don't necessarily have to. There are certain things that I think it depends on what you have going on, right? So here's an example of something that I have seen that people have mentioned to me as a challenge, especially when we're talking about elderly folks, because a lot of people are retiring back home, right? So one of the things that I've seen as a challenge is I've seen people trying to get their Social Security checks. And from what I had seen, many times they had a hard time having them come to African-based banks. I mean, I remember Kenya had mentioned something about what her father had done to get her Social Security in Sierra Leone. And so maybe I'll revisit that and share that with folks who are planning to move of that age. But I think it depends on what you need to do with your bank, right? Every bank is different. Every need is different. So your specific situation may vary depending on the country and what you're looking to do. Jada says, we need hospitals, schools, other essentials catering towards foreigners, small private hospitals, small private schools, private insurance, etc. So there are a few of these things. I just don't think that everybody is aware of them. So like, for example, I have a primary care physician in Ghana. I have sent Americans to him. I have sent Africans to him. And he has been really, really useful. I had an emergency for a friend of mine's parent. And within 24 hours, he gave me access to a surgeon, the cost it would cost to fly the person in, the cost for aftercare, all of it, and was able to give it to me in 24 hours and what I needed to do. So, there are definitely people. And of course, many times it's folks who are from the continent, practiced abroad for some time and moved back to be within country. So I definitely have that in Ghana. There are some places in Sierra Leone now that are accepting Medicare and Medicaid. Well, sorry. Medicaid. Sorry, not Medicare. Accepting Medicaid and Medicaid. Is it Medicare? Which one is it for people who are of advanced age? I always forget Medicare or Medicaid. Medicare for all. Medicaid. Yeah, Medicare is for whom? Sorry, I always make that mistake, so forgive me. Yeah, Medicare. Okay, so Medicare is so there are private hospitals in Sierra Leone, for example, that are accepting Medicare. There are also international insurance plans. I'm working on this course right now. There are international insurance plans that are accepted by many private hospitals in Ghana, for example, and other parts of the continent. So there are, the essentials are there. I just don't think people are aware of those essentials. So are they specifically catered to Black foreigners? Maybe not, but they're catered to foreigners. I mean, there are international schools, for example. I have I have cousins who have children who go to these schools, international schools. I have friends that sent their kids to some of these private schools, and these private schools are taught by international standard. You have some of them you have some that are taught in British standard. You have some that are taught in American standard, if that's what you want, right? But these do exist. I just think there isn't a central repository for people to access. That is something I'm looking to provide. So Jada, it's there. It's just people don't do a good job of presenting that to others. Most people just share their own personal experience and don't share resources to the broader public. That's what I'm working to do, is share those resources. So stay tuned. When that time comes, you will see the insurance companies, who to call, the hospitals, all that kind of stuff, all of those things, the schools, all of that stuff will be in that subscription service. So pay close attention, guys, because that is coming. A wise man says, what can you share about the healthcare system on the continent in your experience? Like I said, it is a broad continent. Every country is different. I will say, South Africa is known as number 1 for healthcare on the continent. Number 2 is Kenya. Both of those countries have medical tourism, meaning people fly in from other parts of the continent to go there to get procedures done, etc. Yeah, so that's what I would say there. And then people like from Sierra Leone, a lot of times they go to Ghana for treatment or for certain things. I mean, just like in the United States or in Europe, there are specialists that deal with very specific things. You find the same thing around the continent. So, but the overall healthcare system, though, generally is in the countries that I have been to, you cannot get service unless you have form of payment. That's been my experience. That's been the conversations I've had with many people. And so that's why many people go to pharmacies, and the pharmacies act as a doctor, which many times they're not classically trained all the way through like a doctor, but they can listen to symptoms and offer things that basically quell those symptoms, but don't actually cure the situation. So, but that's the reason why you see so many people on continent going to pharmacies instead of actual hospitals, because it does require you to pay up front. And sometimes in some countries, you gotta have to kind of pay to get seen sooner, meaning like pay a little extra commission to be seen sooner. It is what it is sometimes. I'm not gonna say which countries I've seen or heard that experience in, but it happens. There you go. Carmelita Jones. Shout out to Carmelita Jones. Okay, so Tony says, I'll be back in Africa and I dread having to deal with US and African banks. Yeah, I think we mentioned that previously. Shout out to Patricia Matthews, the Jamaican flag. Shout out to you. Carmelita says, it is Carmelita, right? Yes. Carmelita says, planning to move. Do you have reputable landlords that still offer yearly rates? Most of them require yearly rates. In fact, I have reputable real estate agents, depending on the country, right? Where are you planning to move to, Carmelita? Are you going to Ghana? I'm not really sure if you mentioned. Okay, yes. The next comment was in Ghana. I do. Again, email me at contact.authenticafrican, and we will get you in our group so that we can share some insights. But yeah, I mean, if you guys want these very specific details, right? Landlords, real estate agents, all of that's going to all be if you guys sign up for the subscription service. I'm playing around with different pricing right now. We've been talking about what we want to offer. Like now, for those who get in early, and while there's we're still building up the content, but those things will come later. I'm not going to say the price now because yesterday's price is not today's price. So by the time this is seen, I don't want there to be any challenges at that point in time. So let's just say the subscription service is coming. If you guys want, just the link in the description after this goes live as a replay, we'll have a link that you can fill out a form, and you will be first to know about the subscription service. And once you're in the subscription service, you'll have access to all of my contacts. Anybody who I've gone to, I don't know if you guys have watched any of those videos on my channel where I've gone on those apartment searches in Ghana. I probably looked at, I'm going to say close to 40 apartments in Ghana. In Sierra Leone, I've only looked at like maybe 4 or 5. I stayed mostly in hotels and stuff, but in Ghana, I've looked at a lot of different apartments, and I can tell you, I'm very familiar with the rental scene, what people charge, what's to be expected, what to ask for. So all of that you will find in the subscription service. So stay tuned. Maybe by the next time we do this live stream in 2 weeks, the subscription service will have been launched. All right. Marva Goldsmith says, I'm curating a trip to Sierra Leone in 2027. Would love to speak with you. How can I reach out to you? Send me an email to contact@AuthenticAfrican, and we can definitely have a conversation, Marva, for sure. Richie Rich says, hey, Joe, what's up with the updates on Sierra Leone citizenship for the diaspora through accession? Yeah, what's up with the updates? If I had one, I'd give it. I know that we are a month away from the question of whether or not it will be given, and updates still have not been given to me, and I am still not sure if it is happening. We're waiting, and I will give you guys the details once I know. I just don't know yet. Unfortunately, I haven't been given those updates. I'm in communication with tour operators there, and they give me updates whenever they have them. So I will let you guys know once I know for sure. Yes, you guys are all letting me know it was Medicare that I was looking for. Yeah, so that's my bad. Medicaid is for lower income individuals. So Patricia's saying, anyone interested in cross-border international banking transactions from the Caribbean to Africa can contact EPEC Capital UK Corporation in Barbados. Okay. People who are planning can also make the move before you transition to the continent. Oh, can also make this move before you transition to the continent. There you go. Using EBAN cross-borders international banking transactions is also available through some banks in the U.S. Tony says, is Alita Israel still selling land in Ghana? And if you know, what is a lot going for there right now? So, so two things. One, she still is operating her business, her construction business in Ghana. She did say at one point that she had paused taking on new folks. I don't know if she's opened that back up again. It looks like, she's made a lot of progress since I last spoke to her or last saw her. Spoken to her more recently, but I haven't asked her about that in particular. That's a great question. I know her contact information is in the link in the video that I did, so you can just reach out to her directly and ask her, but I don't know, to be honest, what land is going for there right now. So Patricia says, I use Charles Schwab Bank. Okay, Carmelita says, thank you. Yes, reach out to contact@AuthenticAfrican. What's the job market like for Americans in Sierra Leone and Ghana? All right, let's start with Sierra Leone. So the job market in Sierra Leone is as follows. If you come from a background of international development, right? Like you've gotten a degree in international development, you've worked for one of these aid companies, there is likelihood of, and you have a master's degree, there's a likelihood of you being able to transition to a career really pretty much around the continent, but specifically in Sierra Leone and in Ghana too, because most of the people who are expatriates and aren't working in, politics or the illicit market, most of those people who seem to be living comfortably are people who work for NGOs. So the NGO market is a huge market in Sierra Leone. That's bigger than the for-profit industries and what people can pay. So that's really where the job market lies, is in the NGO market. Sorry, I'm going to have to drink some water. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Needed to hydrate. So NGOs, big in Sierra Leone. There are for-profit institutions, smaller organizations. Roles there are few and far between. It's very difficult. It's very, very difficult. Now, when it comes to Ghana, Ghana's a bigger market, right? We're talking about right around 8 to 9 million people in Sierra Leone. We're talking about closer to 30 to 35 or 25 to 35 million people in Ghana, right? So larger market, meaning there are more businesses with more opportunity. I think both countries have just about 40% or less internet penetration. So depending on the kind of industry you want to be in, there are jobs in Ghana for sure. I mean, I worked as the head of advertising for a multinational company which had offices in Ghana. Many of my former colleagues have gone on to other organizations in Ghana. There are ride-sharing companies there. There are tech companies there. There are fintech companies there. So there are many different industries represented in Ghana. There was a Twitter office or an X office, but when Elon Musk bought it, he fired everybody and shut down the office. But there are advertising agencies there, in Ghana in particular, right? So Samsung has a headquarters of West Africa in Ghana. There are alcohol brands if you're into that. There are oil companies if you're into that. So there are quite a few different for-profit businesses and industries that are there. But like anything, it's always about your network. And so it's very challenging to get roles just strolling in and applying for jobs. Let me give you an example. So when I first came to the continent, a peer mentor of mine who I've mentioned on many occasions, he's Sierra Leonean. He's raised a ton of money for his startup. He's living in South Africa right now. I knew him from high school. And so he knew the CEO of Jumia Ghana in Ghana, right? So he literally put me in touch with her, and it was a WhatsApp message back to back. It wasn't an email. It wasn't, I'm going to send you her contact information. He made the connection in a WhatsApp group, left the group, and said, I'll leave you to have the conversation. And so her and I were able to communicate, and I ended up having that job 3 months later. So it's definitely important to have relationships when it comes to the job market. I think a lot of people are under the illusion that because they come from the States, it'll be easy to get a job there. The people who I've seen get jobs and it really work out for them are people born in country, built a network through elementary school, middle school, high school, go away for college, spend a couple years working in the diaspora, and then coming back to the country. They tend to come in and be in positions of power and have an easier way navigating the job market. That's where I tend to see people who kind of just come back into country and immediately hit the ground running. For those of us, generally people have to have a role in country before they move there. So many of the people that you meet will have already been working their careers for some time. An opening became available from their organization and they went there and took that role. Not too many people just come there and start a job. It very rarely, I won't say it very rarely happens, but it's difficult for it to happen. It requires a network. So there are going to be different organizations that I recommend you join, especially in Ghana. Sierra Leone doesn't have as many, but they have some. Ghana has a number of them, which are also things that I will have as things that I recommend when you guys sign up for the subscription service. As you can see, there's a pattern here. But that subscription service, I think, will really have a lot to do with the success of people planning to move, travel, or invest. So one of the things that I wanted to do, though, was at least share the link to the form that I'm going to have everybody add themselves to. And I'm going to put that in the chat. This is a preview. I want the real thing. I guess you could fill out the preview anyway. It's fine. Same thing. So let me go back to the chat. So you guys are going to want to go here and we'll get you on the list of people who are going to be first to hear about the subscription program. All right. So Richie Rich is saying thanks. Tony says, I think they've been temporarily suspended for now. What is that? The citizenship by accession program? I think that's probably what you're referring to. Sorry, I'm getting to this late. Have you ever had any experience in Liberia? I have not. I have friends who spent some time there. I have an acquaintance that is Liberian. I myself have not been to Liberia yet, although I have some Liberian roots. I have not been to Liberia yet. Liberia, not yet. It's on my list of places to go, though, for sure. These colonizers never leave us alone. Even in Ghana, you find them. According to Patricia Matthews. And I think a lot of people would agree with that sentiment. I'm just reading comments. Tony says, what are your thoughts on living in Kenya? A lot of expats are heading there to live. Yeah, so I have not been to Kenya as of yet. Of course, I have a set of cousins, you know, a nuclear unit of cousins. I don't know how to describe it, but they all grew up in Kenya. And they've all said the same thing. And it's like, I have to go. It was, they love the experience. And I know, somebody that I partner with, in Kia Simmons, Kia Wakesho Simmons is in Kenya right now. And she's helping people, patriate to Ghana. So, I'm going to be working with her on some things there as well. So she did the journey back to Eden last December, and she's been kind of building on that process. So, but she's going to be one of the people that I'll be having in the back office to share what people are doing. Marva says, Joe, what is your favorite country that you have lived in so far? So I've only lived in 3 countries. I guess only is not only. Most people only ever live in one country their whole life. But I've lived in 3 countries, like actually lived for extended periods of time. That's the United States, and then of course 2 countries on the continent, Ghana and Sierra Leone. Now, my favorite country to live in is not the United States, so you can eliminate that. Although I'm grateful for the United States, and without it, many of the things that I have going on in my life would not be possible. So I do want to just make that clear for those watching and listening. Very grateful for my experience in that blue passport that I do have. But as for my favorite country, so favorite country, different countries for different reasons. So in terms of my people, like my people, like people whose parents know my parents, I know their parents. Believe it or not, I've never had that experience really in the United States. So in Sierra Leone, that's where I have that experience. But in terms of like climate and ease of transportation and moving around, Ghana was my favorite. So I have to say living in Ghana has been my favorite. A lot of Sierra Leoneans, are not happy with me when I say that. When I'm in country, they're like, oh, you too like Ghana. Yeah. So anyway, people say I always talk about Ghana so much. And I do talk about Ghana a lot because I did spend the majority of my time on the continent in Ghana. I worked there. I lived there. But of course, in terms of like the people, though, my people are in Sierra Leone. So they always say it's not where you are, it's who you're with. If I could have the same ease of transport from place to place from Ghana, the ease of systems that you have in Ghana, if I had them in Sierra Leone, I would be in Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone would win hands down, no question. It's just some of the wahala that comes along with living in Salon that makes it a close second, but just very close second, only because of some of those challenges. So Tigri says, I know you talked about if you come to the continent and are you thinking about starting a business, you should think about infrastructure. I'm a truck driver here in the US. How's the freight business? So one of the things that people do talk about a lot on the continent is particularly last mile delivery is one thing. And also logistics. So logistics and last mile delivery are really important. What I can say is you can look to China for where they've added some last mile delivery and some things around getting to different places. The continent of Africa has very similar challenges and circumstances. So Jumia, the e-commerce company that I worked for example, they had like a logistics business that was almost separate from the e-commerce business, right? They had to build out a logistical process from warehouse to end user. And it's because a lot of times, addresses aren't, names of streets are new or changed. Addresses aren't easy to find. Sometimes, like what I will say about living in the States, right, is like, in general, I know it's not always like this, but if you're on a street, right, and 2 Maple Street is here, 3 Maple Street would be across the street, then 4 Maple Street would be the next one over, then 3 Maple Street would be the next one over from the one over there, right? Or sorry, 5 Maple Street. Sorry, it's 2, 4, 3, 5, right? And it's just odds on one side, even on the other. Generally, it is the number and the street you're on is the same thing. What you find sometimes on the continent is that a number, but it'll be like the adjacent street, not that street, is the address. And if you try to put the address into Uber or Lyft or something like that, it makes it difficult. So that last mile delivery, figuring that out, and really like I would say having a map that's very specific and particular and really does capture everything is going to be super important. Now, Google Maps has gone around and drove around all these countries. By the way, I have gone online and I can see they have the street view in a lot of different countries, believe it or not. They've been pretty much mapping everything, and they have that camera that spins around at the top. Or is that Waymo? Waymo does that too, but I think Google does its like pictures. So I have definitely seen that it's been mapped, but one of the things is logistics. Last mile logistics is super important. Getting things in and out of country is important, and getting things around countries are going to be important. The thing about it is many roads are really bad roads. So vehicles meant for long distance driving, they get beat up pretty badly. So yeah, I mean, it's a business to get into. You just have to think about all the contingencies for the additional costs associated with having a truck. These are all good questions. I'm glad you guys are on asking all the good questions. We are right a little over an hour in. Would a truck freight transportation business something to be able to do on the continent? I think you'd have to go to the country and live in country or spend a significant amount of time in the country to see if it's something that could be viable. Because there's two things, right? In the States, you have companies that you can get in touch with if you have a truck, and you can pick up loads and take them back and forth to different places, right? I've seen this happen with people where it's like they buy a truck, they find there's like these third-party systems that are like this thing from here needs to be taken there. If you're already in that city, you can pick it up and take it to that location. You got to have your CDL license, blah, 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 blah. On the continent, every country is different. All the infrastructure is different. And so you'd have to figure out who your customers would be, how you would do those deliveries, what load are you moving, et cetera, et cetera. So those are all things that you'd have to take into consideration. One thing that I will definitely say, is when people drop off containers, right? When they ship a full container, one thing that I think is needed is offloading that container to an end customer or an end user. Sometimes people do shipping and they have like little vans and stuff where they work with people to offload to people. If you had one truck where you could have the container on the truck and you had everybody's stuff in that container, and all you had to do is drive it to where you need to go, open up, people go in, get their stuff, bring it out, move it to the next. That might be a business. But again, every country is different. So you'd have to do some research there to see what makes sense. I hope that made sense, because I realized as I was talking, I'm just throwing out an idea, but obviously you need to spend some time. Patrick Matthews says, I'd rather run away from Babylon than be around them. All right, Patrick. Patricia. I said Patrick. Patricia Matthews. Sorry about that. I get it. I understand what you're saying. Tony says Sweet Salon. Yes, I love Salon. Home Sweet Home Africa, Patricia is saying. Jada says, show of hands on Joe need to stop saying every 2 seconds or we started a drinking game. When I first started doing a live stream, that was the thing that people said to me most, was that you say all the time. Like literally every other word is The thing is, when I'm thinking off the top of my head and I am not deliberate or intentional about how I speak, pauses are filled with ums. So going live is very difficult. Answering questions on the fly, knowing that this is going to live in perpetuity, makes it very difficult to think through what you're going to say, ensure that you're not saying something that you will regret later, and also to remember not to say But yeah, somebody said that from the first time I started going live. Like, you say all the time. And I was like, I guess I do. So yeah, if you guys are drinkers and you want to get drunk, you could play a drinking game. Take a drink every time I say I guarantee you by the end of the hour, you will be 3 sheets to the wind. There it goes. I am working on it though. I am working on it. It is a challenge, let me tell you guys. Okay, so I feel the same way. Have not been to Ghana yet. Sorry, I just said I did it again. I'm not really sure what this is referring to, but definitely let me know. I did it again. See, it's going to happen. So sorry, Jada, it's going to happen. So Tigri 44 says, "Thank you, man. That info really helps. Really thinking of moving to Sierra Leone to get away from the States." Okay. Well, I would say spend some time first, just thinking it through, and take your time. Take your time. There's no rush. Trust me on this one. Everybody who has rushed has regretted it. Most people who I know have been deliberate, have been able to maintain and remain in their country and on continent. Nice try on answering that question without saying and then I immediately did it afterwards. There we go. We're back to it again. Patricia says, "There's nothing wrong with the way you speak." I appreciate that. But I do know, as a public speaker, you don't want to say a lot. I actually have a account that I follow on social media that does real estate and political commentary. And this guy says every 2 seconds. And I noticed that he does that. And I was like, man, that must be how I sound. But as long as you're getting the information you need. So when I do the clips, I actually have it remove filler words. Or when I do an interview, I have it remove the filler words. So you guys get the raw and uncut version of this when I go live. So you hear all of the ums. Anyway, not to dwell too much on it. I'm not bothered by it, but I know that some people might be. So I do address it because at the end of the day, it can be a challenge for some folks. And it is something that I do need a reminder that I have been working on. And it makes sense too when it comes to the career that I have, because I do plan to do more public speaking in my day job as I progress through that realm and that career path. Okay. Patricia Matthew says, "Blessing to all our brothers and sisters who gained their Ghanaian citizenship. Congratulations to all of them." Yes, congratulations to them. It has been a interesting process over the last 2 months. So I'm excited to see that they all got their citizenship. And then, of course, let's see if I can get mine. We're working on it. All right. Marva Goldsmith says, "Great content." Thank you, Marva. I appreciate it. If you guys haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you share this with anybody who is thinking about moving to the continent, who's thinking about visiting the continent and traveling around the different countries, who are thinking about starting a business or investing. Make sure you share this with them. And eventually, the link that I shared there, there'll be a better URL where you could just send people that link directly. Stay tuned. There will be more to come on that, but I'm looking forward to launching the subscription service. All right. Another question. Tony says, "Have you heard anything about ECOWAS possibly uniting with the Sahel states?" Yeah, I've heard that they're not planning on uniting with the Sahel states. I have seen that there has been, some attempts to do some trading, right? Senegal at one point had been talking about it. And Ghana has done a couple of deals with Burkina Faso in particular. So there's definitely some trade agreements and some defense agreements that are underway. But as of right now, you have two conflicting different processes, right? With the Sahel, meaning the AES, right? Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, they are all under military rule and have all done so through a revolution in those countries. The other countries in ECOWAS, and I'm not sure if Guinea is still considered part of ECOWAS, I guess it is, except Guinea, are all under democratic rule in one way, shape, or another. At least it's under the categorization of democratic rule, put it that way. So by nature of the way that these folks come to power, I think there's a direct conflict between the AES and ECOWAS. I think many members of ECOWAS are actually fearful of a potential revolution and military takeover. And so many of them have been hesitant to do cooperative deals with the AES. And by the way, Mali is under sanctions right now by the US government. And they have been for a long time, years now. And so I think that also poses a challenge when it comes to doing trade, because if a country has sanctions, if you want to do business with the country that's putting sanctions on that other country, then you cannot do business with that other country. So in this case, Mali, there'll be those who do not want to do business with them because they were under sanctions by the US. So to answer that question, no, I don't see it happening anytime soon. There's been conversations though about, other countries joining the Sahel or the AES, the Alliance of Sahelian States. I just don't know how that would happen under the current construct of how these countries all operate. Patricia said some also gained citizenship in Burkina Faso, some transitioned to the continent. I think those folks gained residency or permanent residency, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not too sure citizenship was granted. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, that trip was mostly for residency or permanent residency with a pathway to citizenship with Burkina Faso. They are also become self-sufficient. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. The rest of the continent need to do the same, so Africa don't have to deal with the West. Yeah, I would say for sure what we want to see is self-sufficiency across the continent. Yeah, I think that it's something that we all are looking forward to seeing, and fingers crossed that happens. We don't like to see our folks, asking for handouts. We'd like to see our folks really being able to be self-sufficient and to be able to do intracontinental trade. All right, we are at 1 hour and 15 minutes. Any other questions, comments, or thoughts before we go? Patricia's mentioning if Africa is to have sustainable food, they need to start now. I think the continent does, for the most part. I just think the problem is the intercontinental trade. There's a lot of importing happening from outside of the continent for different things. And I think if the trade happened within the continent, there'd be a better situation on food sustainability. So Tony says, have to go. I appreciate all the work you do for us. Be well. Ubuntu. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And, all of you who've been watching so far, those of you who've been around for a while, I saw Catherine on here. I see Patricia Matthews has been around for a while. Jada has been a supporter for a while. So all of you guys who have been supporting the platform, I want to thank you. Those of you who are new commenters, Carmelita, I haven't seen you as of yet. So thank you for joining. Also, I see Tony is a new commenter. Hadn't seen you previously. unless under a different name. Marva was a new one. Pretty C 5454, same thing. I think I've seen Richie Rich before, but let me know. But yeah, a lot of new commenters today. So appreciate you all for joining. Patricia says, blessings, brother. Sounds good. Will the link for the sign up show up in the comments after the video? It will be in the description. So I'll just put that right at the top of the description on YouTube. So I'll edit both the YouTube. So if you're watching the vertical video or if you're watching the landscape video, both versions of it will be in the description, or both versions of the video will have a link in the description. Tigri says, haha, that's where freight and transportation comes into play with intracontinental trade. That's true. Erica Jackson says, are there a lot of Black-owned manufacturing companies on the continent? So let's start with manufacturing companies. Most manufacturing happens outside of the continent. Some manufacturing does happen on the continent in specific countries. So that was one of the things Lesotho was doing, was manufacturing. What was the other country that was doing a lot of manufacturing that after, some of these changes with this administration it dramatically decreased? But yes, so there is some manufacturing happening on the continent, and some of it is African owned. Many times it is foreign owned. Many times. Tony said, been with you since the beginning. Shout out to Tony then. I didn't know that. So shout out to you, Tony. I appreciate that. Do y'all know when that beginning was? When I started going live and when I started doing videos? I wonder if you guys, if any of you guys know. I mean, I mentioned this before on a live stream, but I'm interested to see who knew how long I've been doing this YouTube thing. Marva says, thank you and have a great evening. You too. All right. Looks like people are starting to jump off. Any other questions, comments, thoughts before we go? Any more questions? I know that we went through a wide range of topics today. I'm glad we were able to cover it. You guys have been a really, really engaged group this week, and especially since I didn't even get a chance to promote this live stream. So it's good to see that you guys are doing this. Afro Carib is right. 2021 is when I launched the YouTube channel. February 1st, 2021. I guess I mentioned it in February that I had been on the platform for 5 years. So on YouTube, I launched in 2021. Instagram was earlier than that. I launched a YouTube channel after I had already moved to Ghana. The Instagram page was launched when I was living in LA and working for Hulu back in 2019. So that's why there's so much more traction on that channel, because there was 2 years of build up before we even got to the continent. And once I got to the continent, the numbers started going up. I think I mentioned this to you guys before. If you are unaware, we crossed over the 1 million subscribers and follower mark across everything. So if we count Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Threads, TikTok, and X is like 6,000. But if you count them all, we're at 1,020,000 something, I think now. 1,015,000 or something like that. So I do want to say thank you to all of you who've been with me throughout this journey, who've been sharing the content, who've been following. I every once in a while somebody tells me, there are a number of different high-profile individuals following the platform. I was shocked to see that Dr. Shabazz, Malcolm X's daughter, follows the platform. Joy Reid, if you guys are familiar with her, Jamie Foxx, Samuel L. Jackson, a number of different folks follow Authentic African on Instagram. We got to get them over to YouTube. That's the eventual thing. Get them to be subscribers on YouTube. So spam their inboxes and let them know they need to head over to YouTube and subscribe on YouTube. All right. Afro Carib says, what happened to your friend who came to Ghana with you and you guys were on Labadi Beach? So that's my boy Kels. So Kels was a content creator. He still is. He shoots some content every once in a while. But he's actually working in aviation. He works for an airline now, and so he travels around a lot. And so he was based here in New York. We don't see each other often because he was living in the Bronx. I live in Brooklyn, and you might as well be in two different states. You know, if you know, you know. But yeah, I've known him since I was how old? 14 or 15. So we were good friends in high school. We ended up at the same college, and now, you know, we're both colleagues in content. So he's known me through all the craziness that I went through in high school with all the stuff. And we also knew each other in college too. Those are some stories for some other days. They're not Africa related, but yeah, we played sports together too. So he played football and was on the track team as well. So we both were on the football team and on the track team. So we were two sport athletes, and you know, so we hung out a lot. We were part of a crew. We had a small crew. Not going to tell you the name of that crew because it's definitely very early 2000s name that I won't mention here. But yeah, so yeah, so he's doing his thing, traveling around the world. John Stewart, I cannot put your message on screen, but thank you for sharing. John, hey, be careful with these comments. You know, the platforms don't like when you mention these names in combination, specific names, specific islands, you know, people who, yeah, they just don't like it. So I got to be very careful. So I can't put it on screen or even mention your comment, but I hear you. Words were read. I just can't put them on screen. All right. It seems as though this is drawing down to a close. No more questions, comments, concerns, thoughts. I'll give another minute or two just for any last questions, if there are any. And I'll be doing, you know, ask me anythings every once in a while. You know, I'm working on some other things. Got some things we're cooking. So, you know, we do the live stream on Sundays, every other Sunday as of right now, maybe more frequently, maybe less frequently on Sierra Leone related content. That's on Instagram. We're trying to see if we can get that out of just Instagram and across the broader spectrum in places like YouTube, Facebook, etc. It's gonna be some work that has to happen there. As for the other live stream, so on Thursdays we do the This Week in Africa with Gloria Ayo, who has her new brand, the Diaspora Station. So come back and check us out there. And then on the opposite Mondays, we do This Week in Ghana with Ivy Prosper. So Ivy is going to be joining us next Monday for our live stream. All right, guys. So as I mentioned, the link to the form for you guys to fill out so that you guys are first to know when the subscription service gets launched is going to be in the description on YouTube only. On YouTube only. So I don't know what you call it. I'll X it out. An X. I would have said tweet it out, but I don't know. I'll send it on X so people on X can fill it out. But outside of that, I'm going to send it direct. I'm going to do it directly in the description of the YouTube videos. All right, guys, it has been almost an hour and a half. We've been an hour and 24 minutes into this thing. I want to thank you all for joining. Sorry I started late, but I appreciate you all joining. I look forward to the next live stream. So with that, thanks for watching. See you all in the next one.